to discuss the spoilers for Scream 6. That's right. The sixth film in the franchise has been around since the mid-90s. So it's crazy that it's still going on. We got a new team directing these films, a new cast with some OGs and some returning characters throughout the way. But today, this discussion is all based around this sixth film, which I'm very excited to talk to you all about. I'm not alone. I have a secret accomplice, a second Ghostface that will be appearing to talk about this film with me. But before I bring in my special guest, appreciate you all for clicking on this video. Just a reminder, if you're enjoying the conversation, whether you agree with our take on the film or disagree, hit the like button. It goes a long way, and I appreciate it. Share this video to any Scream fans, horror fans, slasher fans that want to have these type of discussions that we're going to have today. And leave your thoughts in the comments. Again, this isn't a live video. This is pre-recorded, but I read the comments. I love you guys' take on different things that we cover on the channel. So definitely leave your pros, your cons, your predictions for what you want to see next, your best kills, your favorite moments, things that didn't work for you all. Leave that all in the comments. And of course, if you're not already, subscribe to this channel, and more importantly, subscribe to my guests, who I will be bringing in now. I've had him on a channel previously to talk some Last of Us, and he's a horror fan, and I'm a big horror fan myself. So this is going to be a fun time. This is a rare kind of a collaboration for me, because a lot of the times I have people on the channel that I've never met in person. We have good conversations via, live streams or through the DMs, but I actually have met this person in life a couple times, and I'm so excited to be talking about this film with him. It's the one and only Yutaka. What's going on, my man?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to get to talk this film.
Man.
Oh man, this is gonna be a fun one.
Yes. Well, like I said, I've had you on before, but just in case people weren't able to join in on that Last of Us discussion we had, why don't you introduce yourself to the people and let them know where they can find you?
Sure. Yeah. No, I co-host a podcast and YouTube channel called The Horror Hour. You can find us at The Horror Hour TV, and we do podcast episodes where we do deep dives, rankings, and just get gutted and rotted and filthy about horror. But then we also have reviews and interviews, so you can check us out there.
And a first-hand account, I have been on their page. I am a subscriber to their YouTube channel. Their discussions are so much fun. The energy, the chemistry, it's fantastic. So do yourself a favor, y'all. I'm gonna leave my friends' information in the description of this video so you all can check it out, and you won't be disappointed, because there's a lot of good stuff going on there. So happy to have you on to talk about this film. And I know we've spoken before off camera that this was, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of your most anticipated films of the year, would you say? Okay. That leads into my first question, and that is just kind of your thoughts on this franchise and your anticipation level going into the sixth movie in the franchise.
I mean, if there's one thing that I can always count on this franchise being, it's at least consistent. And I do love that they've always brought things, even you can think of all the way back to the very first one, that somehow is brought through. And so I'm a huge fan. And I joke that I'm old enough, but I have seen every single Scream film in theaters opening weekend. It's just,
oh wow, nice.
I truly do love this franchise, and maybe that's why sometimes I might get overcritical, but I do think that if they continue this, though, I'm more than happy to see more films.
I am so similar to you, big fan of the franchise. It's one of the few, for whatever reason, and it wasn't on purpose, but I grew up around horror. It wasn't from my mom's side, it was from my dad's side, who and I never really spent that much time with him, but the little bit of window I did with him, he kind of got me on the bandwagon when I was very young to get into horror. So I wasn't old enough to see the Scream films when it first came out in '96, but and funny enough, the first Scream film I saw in theaters was last year's Scream. Even though I was old enough to see, I would have been old enough to see 3 and 4 in theaters, but I just never had the opportunity to. So last year, seeing it in theater, now seeing this one in theaters, kind of like making up for that lost time. But always been a fan of it, because my favorite horror franchise of all time is Halloween, and then particularly my favorite horror film of all time is 1976 Halloween with John Carpenter, which I was, that was 20 years, 30 years before I was even brought into the earth. So to have a franchise that I can say I grew up with is something that I've always been a fan of. And within the subgenre, horror, slasher is my favorite, because it just comes with all the tropes. Of course, every genre has a trope, but I just love what the slasher genre has to offer, and just the thrills, the adrenaline, and of course the big reveal: who's the killer, who's doing all these killings. So Scream kind of checked those boxes off for me, and of course Wes Craven being the icon, the legend that he is. Rest in peace to him, and just kind of bring his sensibilities to that franchise and making it what it is. It's not my favorite, but it is one of my favorite horror franchises of all time. So very excited to talk to you about this film. I was very excited to see this film because I was one of the people that really enjoyed Scream 5. Very much so. And I really enjoy the flavor, the energy, the callbacks, and just the brutality of the kills, which kind of went back to, some of the old school stuff I love about Scream. So this one was a big one for me, which brings me into our next discussion here, Yutaka, is opening up this film. And by the way, guys, full disclosure, me and Yutaka talked for almost like an hour when we saw the film on Monday, but there's still a lot to dive into. But one of the things that we definitely can agree with, and I'll go as far as to say this, the opening of this Scream, it might be my favorite. I mean, the first one obviously is iconic. Drew Barrymore. What's your favorite scary movie? Popcorns, blood, guts, all that stuff in the first one. But the reason I love this one, and obviously I want to get your thoughts on it, it was just the perspective of seeing a Ghostface in action, then what a Ghostface does after that action, and get into all that stuff. So again, we're talking spoilers, so you all know what we're referring to. We have, which I think a lot of us kind of assumed Samara Weaving was going to probably be the first kill because, she has her relations with the director with Ready or Not, and she wasn't really too heavily involved in the promotion. So when we opened the film, I kind of saw that coming, but what I didn't see coming is what we proceed to see. So Yutaka, take it away, man. What did you made a face when I said this might be my favorite, but I think you might agree that this might be at least one of the most unique openings that we got in the Scream movie.
Absolutely. It's definitely my second favorite opening. I can't just remember my feelings when I watched the first one. Yeah, my chest was pounding, but this one, we knew it was coming, so I was like, what are you going to do different to really throw me off?
Yes.
And then to see it from Ghostface's perspective after the kill, wild. Absolutely. I was just like, wait a second.
Grab a backpack, let me get the beer, let me just walk home. Just matter of fact type of, I just murdered someone for the first time. It's all good.
The fake out too, where I thought we were going to see the title card where slashes, and I was like, oh, we're going to get no, wait, we're still going.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that that was genius on their part. I wanted to see something that really freshened up the openings.
And that's the thing about radio silence, right? Especially going back to Scream 5, they're breaking the rules. We got Tara being the girl that survived in the first one, kind of breaking that tradition that we're normally used to seeing. And now I'm thinking about it, I might backtrack a bit. I might be speaking hyperbole with it being the first, the best one of the franchise. Because that Drew Barrymore, and again, not having had seen it in '96, but having seen Scream for the first time and not knowing anything about it when I saw it a couple years after it released. Drew Barrymore was the big star. She was the big she was the one on all the posters and all that stuff. So I can imagine going back to that. If I could go in a time machine, my mindset of being like, wait, they just where anyone can die now, right? So it kind of set that tone. So I'll go back. I'll say, like you, it's probably my second favorite for sure. And I'm a fan of Scream 2 opening too with Jada Pinkett.
Oh, that's a good one
movie
too.
Theater and the glory hole scene, all that stuff is very, very, very good. But yeah, going back to this one, like you said, the thing that kind of really impressed me with this and kind of caught me off guard for a second there, and let me know if you were in the same wavelength. I was thinking that it was like an opening to a stab film, because when we have her on the phone talking to, I'm like, I already know that's not her date, because I knew I've seen Tony in other films and I watched him on Servant. I was like, that's not her date. So I'm like, wait, this seems very kind of hokey. Like, are we watching an opening to a film of the next stab film? But as it kind of goes on, you hear Samara Weaving. She's using her her Augie accent.
That caught me off guard. I was I was like, okay.
Yeah, they're just letting her, be free, because she's like, hey, if I'm going to be in this for 15 minutes, let me just go ahead and be my most authentic self. So we see them in the alley, man, and everything kind of pulls out, and he stabs her. And again, it's just the brutality and the visceral nature of it. And then just to see them, him take off his mask, put up his, suit, and then just walk away in the crowd. Like, literally nothing happened. To me, it was just so shocking, on top of what we proceed to see next, which is, I think, maybe up there as far as just like the brutal nature of what we saw of him finding his boyfriend in the refrigerator. That's like Scream 4 levels of like brutality and a head being I can't, and I'm
Yes.
sure you might correct me on this, and people in the comments, have we ever seen a beheading and chopping up of a body and being left in a freezer type of situation in the Scream
I
franchise?
do not believe
I
so.
don't
That
think
caught
so.
me off
Yeah.
guard. I I was impressed that they went that route, but I was just like,
Yes.
oh, they really meant we're gonna give you the gore you wanted
Yeah.
because we know you missed out on it. So here you go. And that was shocking. And then same thing, like his kill was also just I was so happy with that.
It set the mood for that was just the tip of the iceberg of what the film has to offer. And like you just said, yeah, the radio silence team, Tyler and Matt definitely had kind of said, hey guys, this is probably going to be the most brutal Scream film you're going to be seeing. And I think it's safe to say after seeing this film now, they definitely lived up to that expectations 100%. But from that amazing opening, we kind of pivot into, okay, now where our characters are. And if I'm not mistaken, it's been 6 months since the events of the first Scream. We see that Tara is trying to move on with going to college, as well as, the core four going along with her, including Chad, as well as Mindy, and of course her sister Sam being kind of I kind of likened her to in this film to kind of a Laurie Strode, where she's just like doubling up all the locks. She's keeping her eyes, peeled everywhere she's looking. So she's very much on her P's and Q's. So how did you feel about this kind of transitioning into, okay, where are they at in life? 6 months later, they're in New York. Did you kind of like how they were setting the stage with these characters, with this following up from them being the survivors of Scream 5?
It was kind of nice to see, again, when I think about the, 1 through 3 and how they cope with everything, we got
Yeah.
something completely different, and I really appreciated that approach. So
Yeah.
seeing all of them, I mean, they're basically trauma bonding and they're all trying to
Yeah.
get through it their own way, which is very different than what we're used to seeing. I personally was a huge fan of that, and I could totally see the Laurie Strode, like when she was Lockie, I was like, oh my gosh. I was like,
She wasn't
that's
playing no
what
games, man.
yeah, and I loved that. I was very happy to see that. And also I also really liked Sam's character in the fifth one, but I think both her and Tara really, I thought I was very impressed with their character arc and acting this one, because they were given, I think, better lines.
I couldn't agree with you more. So I was in the camp with Scream 5 because I know we talked about it. There were, I know people in your group that on your team weren't the biggest fans of Sam, if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
And they're not the only ones. I know a lot of people, and they weren't the people that were like coming at the actress. Like when people were coming at Melissa Barrera, I'm like,
oh
what
yeah, it
was
was
going on
awful
with you people? She's a great actress. She's a great up and coming actress. I loved her. And Into the Heights, her chemistry with Anthony Ramos is fantastic. And she's a star on the rise. So I really enjoyed her characteristics in 5, and was really excited, like you just mentioned. I was really excited that they're continuing on with her mental state. And I mean, that's a lot to take on for her to be able to transition from finding out her dad was a serial killer, and now people are looking at her differently, and it kind of changed the trajectory of her life, and obviously surviving with the events of Scream 5. I think she, to me, in this film, and we'll get more into the characteristics and performances, but to me, I thought Marissa Barrera, and this isn't any slight towards Jenna Ortega and any of the great performances, but she was the best performance to me in this entire film, because there's so much, to me, it was so much on her plate to kind of weigh in.
Agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, from her still being a victim, dealing with everything with Scream 5, and obviously her relationship with her father, the idea of her still being the caretaker of a sorts of her sister that she's missed so much time with, and now having this kind of burden to make sure that she's safe, and also their friends being safe, but then also still having that stoic kind of badass final girlness to her when she's just like, I'm going to make sure that we're good. So I just think that she was able to balance all those like kind of sensibilities in a very good way. So, I mean, any more thought? I mean, again, we'll talk about the other performances, but your thoughts on Melissa, man, and what she brought to this role in this,
I
this
think
sixth
she
one.
carried a lot of that film.
Yeah.
That was what, again, yes, I loved her in 5, but I thought she went to another level, I think, with this one. And I think that's more so because we got to see, just again, you said, they continued to delve into her mental state and how she's trying to just cope. And there was just so much that they gave her. And I think she really, also, when we talk about action sequences, she kicked some ass.
She
and
does,
so it was just very,
She's
She
great.
was
And
probably the MVP, in my
I
opinion,
think
as well
so.
for
And
this
let us
film.
know, everyone watching this, let us know in the chat how you felt about her performance. And if you agree with us that she definitely, again, this isn't taking away. We'll talk about Jenna's role because I think she was great as well as Tara.
Oh
Because
yeah.
that's also a very kind of a hard task to kind of be the co-lead of a sorts and kind of be like this new addition to the franchise, because we've always followed Sidney, but Sidney's never had a sibling to take care. Well, she's had a sibling that she finds out about in the third one, but not to the extent of what we get with Sam and Tara. So she was great. We'll talk about Mindy and Chad, but I just thought, like you just mentioned too, what she was able to do to kind of carry her baggage into Scream 5, also opening up this new idea of her, trying to constantly protect her sister, kind of being overbearing, but also by the end of the film, which we'll get into, her kind of allowing the loosening of a leash of a sorts. But I just thought that she was great through and through. But as we kind of navigate through this first half, and we got, again, opening up really well, catching up with our characters, we start to see where their stories kind of taking place. And the location, first off, I just want to get that out of the way now before I forget, because that was another one of my favorite characters, because New York is a character in this film. And I lived in upstate New York, and one of my biggest regrets of life, I've lived in New York for 3 years, upstate New York and Rochester, and I never went down to New York City. It's a big regret of mine. So I don't know if have you been in New York before?
Yes. What? Get out of here.
I'm telling you, I kick myself in the butt every day when I think about this not
You better take a
going down.
plane trip there.
I know.
Like
It's got to make it happen.
I went there just this past year, just by myself, for a festival, because I was like, I'm just gonna go with it. And I love New York. It is.
Yeah. Everyone
The
I know
set
is like,
pieces in
what is
this
wrong?
film.
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
mean, take
God.
from there, take it away, man. What did you think about the new location? Of course, in Scream 3, we went to Hollywood, but it wasn't, it really wasn't. It was a character they were making a movie. They tried to play into Hollywood and all that, but I thought the New York presence was much more prominent in this film. So, your thoughts on the location change and how you felt about New York being a character?
Oh yeah, well, because like you said, Hollywood, though, you still felt they were isolated, because then you're still looking at kind of the elite. Whereas
Right.
here in New York, the idea of just anything happening in plain sight, when you think about the opening and then other scenes, it just adds more
People didn't give a
tension.
shit. They're just like,
Oh yeah,
whatever.
they're
This is
like,
New York. This
I'm
is
just
like, oh,
gonna
you're
keep moving
done.
on. Yeah, and that's what I love about that, because then
Yeah.
it's like, oh my gosh, they're asking for help. They're screaming in, like, not broad daylight, but nothing's happening in a sense. And I just, so then you see the fear in their faces, and I really just I appreciated it, because I also love Woodsboro. But
Yeah.
this again, we're adding some new ideas, or making it fresh.
Yep.
For this, what I'm gonna say will probably be a new trilogy.
Yeah. 100%.
But this was a perfect setting that I have been personally waiting for, because I felt like you got almost a little bit of that at the car chase in Scream 2, but now I feel like we really finally got that urban and that city vibe, to where you just have so much to do.
Yep. I agree. New York, the new location to me, and I think you all said it when you did your spoiler-free review, which, again, guys, make sure to check out his YouTube channel. Great content. But I know in you guys' discussion, one of your partners had mentioned that the idea of, like, kind of this New York vibe is just, again, it just puts, and you even said it now, it just puts this whole new spin on this sense of urgency, sense of suspense, where it's just like you don't know where the killer's going to pop up, because they're in New York. It can literally, and perfect timing too. I wish they would have played a little bit more into the Halloween. Like, it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was during Halloween,
Yes,
correct? Yeah.
I think
So
so. And they should
yeah, because
have.
if
They
everyone was dressed
really
up in their
had.
costumes, yeah, I wish they would have leaned into that just a little bit heavier. But again, they don't want to become, it's obviously Halloween and clashing with another franchise. But I do just love how the presence of New York was there, and then we'll get into the standout scenes with the Bodega and the train. But I do love that they switched up scenarios, which, not to jump too far ahead, but do you think if we do get the inevitable announcement of a Screen 7, which, as we're recording this, there was a report that has been greenlit, but it hasn't been, like, officially greenlit by the studios.
It feels like it's a scooper, but not
Yeah.
official just yet. But I'm
Yeah, but I'm
hoping.
pretty sure once this video is up and as the weekend box office numbers come out, we'll know Monday that Scream 7's in the works. But just
Yeah.
curious, after you go to New York, do you go back to Woodsboro? Like, do you think that they're gonna, I don't know, do you stay in New York for a Scream 7? Do you go to another location? Like, where do you, and then we'll, like, obviously we're gonna have a whole discussion about what next, but just kind of throwing out the location now, do you think there's another change to come in locations come Scream 7?
I hope not, because technically they're in college, and I think it would be great to, again, keep it in New York, because there's still so many other great locations. And there's just a lot you can do in terms of creating a pool of suspects.
Right. I agree. And it would be, like you said, unless they do like a big time jump, and they're like the senior year, or there's spring break, of course, and they're going back home. But I think it would be smarter of them to stay in New York, just because, like you said, while New York was a great presence, there's so much more you can do in the city of New York City. Even though, like I said, I've never been there, but I've seen a ton of movies, and I know a bunch of TV shows that cover the different boroughs and different sections of New York and all the different things that can happen in New York. So I would like for them to stay. And again, we'll get into that when we get into thoughts of the Scream 7. But just to backtrack a little bit, because I forgot to mention the opening scene. They establish a little bit of where there's a connection going on from Scream 5 to Scream 6, as we learned that Jason and his boyfriend were a part of the same kind of online sphere of Richie and Amber that they've kind of created, which opens the door of like, well, if they're a part of the crew or the cult, there's probably other people out there. But we get a sense that this is kind of a interlinked connection where they decide to kill, which was kind of messed up, that their first choice to kill was their teacher because he gave her a C on his grade or something. Like,
I loved that.
Sadistic as hell.
She gave me a C+ on my Giallo paper. I was
like, okay, I guess. And again, shout out to Samara Weaving. Again, a very small role. I'm a big fan of hers, obviously from Ready or Not, but also, I don't know if you saw, it was called The Babysitter on Netflix a couple of years ago. Love the first one. Wasn't the biggest fan of the second one, but she's just, she's great. So I do, again, not to harping back on that, but I just love that opening so much. But again, we kind of established that, okay, this killer is obviously connected to Richie, Amber, the online cult, and we'll get into who the actual killers are a little bit. And I'll just give you guys a teaser. I wasn't a fan of the killers, like the reveal, but we'll save that to when we get there. But as we navigate through, okay, now our characters know that there is a killer on the loose, and now Sam is telling Tara, we got to get the hell out of there. I love, again, this goes back to, let's just talk about Jenna Ortega. She's like, I am not like about to uplift my life yet again, just because of your fear. You're kind of allowing your trauma to kind of bleed into my life. I'm trying to move on. And juxtapose what Sam is doing. She's like, well, you still haven't faced your trauma. And again, I think that's where the story, to me, is really where the richness lies in this narrative. Again, it's fun, a lot of great kills, great Ghostface kills, but then the actual story and the themes, if you want to touch on that, Yutaka, that whole connection and kind of transition into your thoughts on Tara and her trying to not allow the trauma to create the rest of her life.
Well, I mean, and part of it, though, she also wasn't processing. You're like, I love that they're showing her that she's, not that she was drinking, but she's like, I'm going to go to a party. I'm going to have fun. I'm just going to make stupid decisions and not care about it, even though in reality, you can tell, like, no, that's not a good decision. That's just poor. That's not going to get you
down
killed.
A spiral hill.
And so, again, as you said, like, Tara got more to do also in
she wasn't in the hospital for half the film like Lori in Halloween Kills.
So we got to see more of that, and I think it was really great to get to see also, again, how she interacts with other characters, because she's still very just, I wouldn't say carefree about it, but maybe she doesn't careless. She just doesn't care.
And I mean, and another thing too, I guess, kind of a product of your environment, where, again, in this fictional world, kind of set within our world, I mean, and also in the reality of things, I think, and this might speak to just a generational thing, where I think kids, or not kids, but like the teenagers and people in their early 20s or so, they're kind of, I don't want to say desensitized, but like and this film touches on social media and toxicity and that, but maybe in Tara's mind, it's just like you're on your phone on TikTok and you can see someone recording a video of someone getting beat up, or, everyone's, watching Netflix series of murderers and just being obsessed with that side of it. So I don't know if there's some commentary on Tara where she's not, a hollow person, but it's just like kind of I want to move on. I don't want to live in this because it's almost like it's part of everyday life to a certain extent. Not to obviously not everyone's being chased by a serial killer, but I don't know. Do you think there was a little bit of commentary on Tara's trying to skip past it because it is kind of set in this time that we live in, that it's just kind of like crazy stuff happens and it's just like it's just another Tuesday.
Well, I mean, I think also she just doesn't want to be. She doesn't want that to define her, whereas it defines Sam, unfortunately.
100%. Yeah.
And so I think there's that just that storyline, or where I see is, again, they're still so different in the end, though they become so much alike. But I like that in terms of, again, desensitized, also misinformation, because I love that when they get into that commentary. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy to me that her character, though, also would still at least not be. Girl, if your phone rings and it's your family member, I'm just saying you just check that phone,
especially with their history. Yeah. And she was, the hair was let down a lot. And again, she's young. She's gonna, and I would imagine next time we see her in an inevitable Scream 7, her radar will be definitely, she'll be a changed character, and she'll be a lot more probably closer to Sam than anything else. But as we kind of navigate again, the news reports that there might be connections to what went on a year ago. And again, like you just mentioned, how this film kind of throws in social commentary with the news, headlines and fear and getting everyone, riled up and whatnot. We kind of transition over to our first kind of next big set piece, which Tara tags along with Sam to go to the police station, which now we get our first attack on the sisters. And I'm curious, and again, I know we've only seen it once, but who do you think that Ghostface was? And we'll talk about the reveal, but there are 3 killers involved. Who do you think that was that stabbed them and was the one that was, doing the Bodega Scene? Because I have my thoughts on who I think that particular killer was during that scene. And we could probably eliminate.
Are we saying names? Because
because obviously there's 3 killers, and we'll get into like the reveal. But who do you think that killer was?
I feel like it's Ethan.
And Ethan being Jack Champion's character.
Yeah, I mean, because if Detective Bailey was at the precinct and Quinn was doing her thing,
right? She was upstairs with
That only, to me, that's I feel like that is. But again, that Ghostface seems so tall, and I just that's what threw me off. I go, wait a second.
And I think too, this is like a franchise kind of inconsistency. I always, especially with Scream 5, because I think Scream 5 said that it was Amber that killed Dewey. The way she was handling Dewey to me, I'm like, there's no way that and not to make it a man versus female conversation, but it was like that height difference, the body mass. It was like, to me, they're like so inconsistent.
It takes a lot to cut through like flesh and bone, like Amber. To me, I was just like, I don't see that, but okay.
So to that point, I actually, going back to you saying you think it was Quinn's character, I actually do think it was Wayne, the detective, because this goes to him saying a little bit later in the film where he's like first one on the scene, as well as the way he was handling that shotgun training when you're police. So I think that might have been him in that moment, especially with the clean shot of shooting the Bodega clerks right in the face with perfect aim and him dodging a bullet. So, hey, I think that might have been him in that moment. But we could be wrong. Let us know in the chat who you all think that killer was during that Bodega scene. But in the scene, that scene, and I think we talked about it the night that we saw it, I almost wish they didn't show it in the trailer.
I wish they didn't.
Yeah, because that is so, even though, and again, this is just a credit to the filmmakers and the actors and the scene in general, it still played out well. I was still tense. I was still like on the edge of my seat, but I do kind of wish that they didn't show that. But I think you all mentioned your spoiler-free review that it kind of, got to show that because it is a big set piece and it probably brings people in like, oh, Ghostface has a gun now, stirs up some controversy, even though some people were like, Ghostface with a gun, what is this? It's like, have you guys not seen every other Scream movie where Ghostface shoots people? But anyway, what were you going to say?
For me, like if when they showed it in the trailer though, they still showed way too much of it. Like I like the idea.
It was sped up. Yeah.
I just like, you could have maybe shown a shot or like, because you didn't have to do, to me, you didn't have to, because again, I don't think that takes away from my enjoyment of that scene because again, that was tense as hell.
Very
and
much.
the sound design too.
No score. It was just them crawling on the ground.
Like it was really good, but I was just like, dang, that could have been just like a beautiful surprise. Even though I'm like, that's New York, and I could easily see somebody being like that in a bodega. They're like, you trying to get in front of me?
Right.
Like, I did love seeing the other people who probably left weren't going to do a damn thing, but I'm like, yeah, that'd be me. I'd be like, bye, see ya.
Well, and actually, to that point, I am surprised that no one stayed and tried to record it and try to upload it to like TikTok or World Star. Especially, I'm thinking, which, by the way,
that's true.
Terrible film, Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Netflix last year. When the people were on the bus and they were filming, like that would be something that people would do. So I am surprised that people did kind of bounce, which also kind of brings me to the point, and this is just a little nitpick. The way Ghostface is able to escape certain things and no one captures them on camera, no one's able to see where they went. And I was very surprised there was no camera in the bodega that they would have saw because he didn't take off his mask. He just left the mask there. But that's just a little nitpick. But again, like you said, even though it was in the trailer, I thought that the way they executed it and like you said, the tenseness and the suspense was still there, even though we kind of knew it was coming. So it was, and I can't remember how did they break out of that? Did the police come? Is that how the Ghostface ran?
Remember, they were crawling, and then they noticed that Ghostface was on the other side, and so they pushed the shelf.
They pushed the shelf, yep.
Then
they ran out.
Yep.
They end up running. Okay, and then he ended up escaping once the police finally did get. Okay, gotcha.
Which again, that door was locked. How did
that
he
door
quickly find the keys and know how to unlock it? I'm sorry. Like I was just like,
he got the key, and listen, it's not good. No, he had a gun. He shot the door open. Maybe I don't know.
That I would have believed.
Yeah, but he was out of there like the Flash.
And again, but
the
again, the scene was impressive.
It was very much impressive, very much so. So as we go from there, we see Sam obviously talking to the police. This is where the detective gets involved. And I kind of had my radar, even though they did a good job of kind of throwing us off or whatnot. I kind of had my suspicions of the detective, but we'll talk about him a little bit later. But this is where Gale comes into the mix after they're released from being, questioned and investigated by the detective. What did you think about and this is like the third time they've done the whole Gale gets punched in the face bit with Obviously Scream 1. I think they recreated it in 2. And then this time, we see it here. Did they do it in 5? Did they do it in 5 too? Did Gale have a moment?
No. Nobody. Okay. She didn't get punched.
A punch. Yeah. But I did think I was funny that Tara ended up being the one to punch her. That was
this one. I loved it. I laughed because I'm like how like she ducks or dodges it like this isn't my first rodeo kind of thing. And I'm like, that's great. Like, I was like, okay. I was like, it's cheesy, but that made me laugh.
It's Gale. Which I guess to kind of get on this note with characters, kind of bridging Kirbys return because she was in the police department with them and she's now an FBI agent. How did you feel about Gale's presence? Was it as effective? Was it as useful as her return to Scream 5? And, tying it into Kirby, how did you feel about her making her return to Scream 4?
I think we got to see Gale return to her roots, which I kind of figure, like, I feel that this was also her way of processing her grief is she wrote that book. She returned to her roots, and that's just, and so I really did appreciate because I was like, that's Gale. I totally get that. Yeah. I didn't think anything. I know a lot of people were upset, but like, how could she get over Dewey? I'm like, I think she's not, which I think at times we'll see we'll talk about, but I appreciated that for her character. And then with Kirby, it was such a welcome return just to see Hayden Panettiere back, even if I say the acting was a little choppy at times.
I want to put that. Yep, I got something to say about that. Yep.
But I did really enjoy seeing her because I think as anytime we get a legacy character, there's also that I'm like, are they just going to be a cameo but they actually gave her stuff to do, even though I think character decisions were sometimes bad, but they also gave her some good lines. So I was happy to see that she really got to do more than what I was originally expecting.
No, I agree. I agree. And going back on your comments on Gale and Courtney Cox, yeah, I definitely thought that she was just as effective, if not even maybe a little bit more in this one, especially with her getting her first call from the killer, and one of the most intense scenes that we've seen with this film. But I thought that she was fine. Courtney Cox, I love her. She's, I was never a big Friends fan, but a girlfriend I was dating at the time would always watch that before we went to bed. So I'm
I
like
love Friends.
permanently, I'm like this, I'm a fan of her. And I was actually, this is a side note with Friends. I'm much more of a Courtney Cox fan than I am Jennifer Aniston. I always had a big crush on. I thought she was the more attractive character out of the two, but neither here nor there. She was also a good cook. But seeing her in this film, I really enjoyed. The Kirby of it all. This might be a hot take. I thought, and you kind of touched on it, her introduction to this, getting into the mix, was kind of stiff. And I don't know if it was just like her trying to be, and not the actress, but like the way they're trying to play it is like she's mature now. She's an FBI agent now. She's a little bit more stern. She's a little bit more serious. She's not as, and I think eventually as the film went on, she became to kind of let her hair down. And I love the scene with her and Mindy. And she kind of gets to the Kirby that I really enjoyed with Scream 4. But at first it was just too on the nose. It was almost too, it felt very much like a Saw film. She felt like a Saw cop to me. Like, kind of figuring out the crime and coming in with the files and, good to see you, Sam. It was just like, it was kind of, I don't know. And especially speaking about Saw, going back to our detective.
That, and I totally kind of agree with that.
When I was watching, I'm like, dude, this is like Saw 4, 5, 6, 7. Like the cops in Saw were like kind of very stale to me. But speaking of stale, and this is just kind of piggybacking on our detective here, Wayne Bailey. I like Dermot. I've seen him in a lot of stuff, but man, he was easily the worst actor to me in this film, to me. And it could have been, and not blaming it all on him. I think some of the writing had to do with that, but he was just too dry at points. And then when we get to him at the extreme at the end, it was like he's just too high as far as the way he's acting. It's almost like he's in an opera. And I know that's like the Scream thing to be kind of turned up to an 11 when you reveal yourself, but Dermot, man, I don't know, and not to jump too far ahead, but just kind of on a character note, what did you think about Wayne Bailey and his performance, kind of keeping it in the vein of, the police and all the different characters?
It was all over the place, even when he was a cop. Yeah. Like, Liam, when we do our spoiler review as well, he had mentioned how just the way he answered the phone was just kind of cheesy. Or maybe not Liam. I think that might have been George, but I completely agree because I'm just like, what the? Wait a second.
Like this? Yeah.
Yes. I was just like, is he trying to be like that tough,
right?
NYPD
like 80s.
cop?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Like, well, hold up.
Like, is that when you're on the set? Like, hey, like, okay, how do you want me to play the scene? Well, pretend you're, in you like you just said, an 80s, 90s procedural on CSI, and you kind of have that edge.
Oh my God, yes.
Play it that way. Okay, action. Hello. Yeah. Okay. Oh my! Like it was like, what is this guy doing? He's a good actor. He's a good actor. I don't want to throw shit. But I think he just didn't work for me in this film.
There were some choices with that character that I just.
Yeah, definitely. And again, in this entire franchise, there's always, I think, and that's the beauty of the franchise, they play to the tropes. So for those that do like the Detective Wayne Bailey, he's a tropey character. He's a character that plays into, let's play the cop of the scenario, right? Play the stereotypical cop that seems to be 2 steps behind and ends up being the killer itself. But yeah, I didn't like his performance too much, or at least the direction they gave him. But kind of pivoting over to, okay, so now Sam, and the whole idea that Sam is now having this pressure, or the idea that people are like saying that she's the killer. And tying into the video that someone recorded of them antagonizing her and pushing her, and then they just catch the back end of it, which again speaks to the social commentary at all. It's like, you don't have the whole story, but we get that whole shakeout. And from there, we got, and also I don't want to leave out, there's the other characters with Mindy and Chad. Chad has his roommate who ends up, Quinn, who we'll talk about, played by Jack Champion. Also, Mindy has her girlfriend, Anika was her name, but I can't remember. Annika, which I love. Too bad she died, man. I love their chemistry. I wish they would have had more screen time together. I really like their
I completely agree.
Yeah.
That would have hit more emotional if they did.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. So even before we get to that, we have the stereotypical Scream, Scooby-Doo, let's partner up. Let's put all of our chips on the table, led by Mindy, which I'm just going to say it now. She's so great. She plays the Randy 2.0 so good with her own flavor. Because I think Jasmine is another up-and-coming star, just in the same vein as Jenna Ortega. Every time I see Jasmine in anything, including this franchise, she's just a scene stealer. And she tells us, as she's the audience, or telling us, the audience, how this film is going to work out the rest of the way. The rules are broken. Legacy players can die. It's, again, we've seen in all the Scream films, but I just really enjoy when she gets her moment to shine, and that she's us in that moment, right? Us horror fans, talking to the characters. So just kind of your thoughts on, I guess, pivoting over to not only how did you feel about Mindy, but also, I guess, throwing in Chad into the mix. I think he's the Dewey 2.0 of this Friends group, the core four.
Oh my gosh. It's funny because obviously we do have he's like the stereotypical dumb jock, but he is Dewey in a sense.
Right.
And
he's then he has a heart of gold.
Yeah. I mean, even in the promotion, I think Mason Gooding was on his show and he's like, and I'm shirtless. I'm like, they're playing into it. They know what they're doing.
Right.
And so I enjoy that, but I will completely also agree. The next person I would say would be my MVP is Jasmine Savoy Brown as Mindy, because when she does that whole rant and she calls out Ethan, just like, you are like number one, just as she's going around.
She was actually right. She doubted herself, but she was
telling her this entire, I love that performance. And Randy's always been a character that I've loved.
Yep.
So I've loved that we get to see this new take, and it makes me so happy. And I agree. Like, Jasmine's going places. I mean, hello, Yellow Jackets. So
catch up.
You get to see she portrays two different characters. And even in this film, even when they're like in danger, she still has time to like play jokes, and I love it.
Yeah. And listen, to that point, again, going back to performance, that's not an easy thing to do, to be in a serious slasher, life on the line type situation, but also still kind of know how to throw in the nuance of comedy and kind of that levity. And we'll talk about a decision a little bit later that I think obviously the directors are very aware that she's a fan favorite, so they didn't go ahead and do the full killing of the character and kind of repeat Scream 2, which I think this film, Scream 2, I do feel like this, and I know you guys mentioned in your review that this is definitely this Radio Silence, kind of their take on the Scream franchise, where the first one was kind of like, bridging the gap from 4, 3, 2, 1, and having a little bit of their flavor, where this was just kind of like more of their sensibilities. But it definitely has a Scream 2 template over it, which this film does acknowledge. They're in college now, and so they're very aware. But it almost felt a little bit too recycled at points for me, as far as following a lot of the tropes, especially when we get to the reveal and it being on a stage as it was in Scream 2. So there's a lot of
I didn't even think of that.
There's a lot of recycledness going on here, but again, that's the franchise. They're very self-aware of what come before. But going back to Jasmine, like you just mentioned, I just love where her career has been going. And I think we talked about it, Leftovers. If you guys haven't seen Leftovers, one of the greatest shows of all time. She was great in that as her character. So she's great, man. She is so great. And I'm both happy, but also wish they would have killed the character, just to show the stakes are really there. But we'll get into that non-death scene a little bit later.
I think somebody else could have died instead, but that's just me. But
yeah. Oh yeah. We'll get to Mr. Her twin there, who is literally the Dewey of this group. Like, he should be dead. But they now have this whole plan at hand where actually before that. So we get into, it's nighttime. Our crew is coming up with a plan. And again, just showing the brutality of our Ghostface killer. Just bust into the room. He don't care who's in that room. And, we get, the chase sequence within the apartment complex. We get 2 deaths. We think 2 characters are dead, which we find out a little bit later. One was playing fake death. But I think you mentioned it earlier that you love how we get the chase sequences and the intensity in the chase sequences, especially in the closed quarter of an apartment. The ladder scene. And I'll just kind of pivot into this. One of the best kills of this movie is the ladder scene, as we see them, Jasmine's girlfriend gets cut in the stomach. I don't know how she was able to maneuver around there. Her guts were literally hanging out, but I don't know how she,
because they like stuck and lifted a little. I was like, oh, you're not moving.
You're not, I don't know how. I guess pure adrenaline at that point. But she stabbed the roommate whose name escapes me, Quinn. Her side piece was brutally murdered, and
but I did love that.
Yeah, I gotta go back to rewatch it. Was her fake out death? Was her throat supposed to be slit? I can't remember how they left her dead.
Her throat was slit, and she was thrown onto Annika. And so I think there was that whole confusion, so nobody really checked because they just assumed she was dead.
Right.
But when that chase scene, and that's when like Mindy's like running through to get the bathroom doors, like, oh, you're dead. Or I was like, that's funny.
Yeah, she gets cut. Which, by the way, she got cut in the arm and she was acting like she couldn't walk. I'm like, why are you acting like your legs are not working? I guess she's in shock. But nitpick. But
she's been cut there before.
Yeah.
I thought. Or no, maybe it was the hand, but still.
Yeah. But we go through the apartment. And again, this is another, take a shot at home. Who was the killer in that moment? We know Quinn obviously wasn't because she was playing possum. It couldn't have been Quinn, the detective. So that must have been champion Ethan. I would assume that was Ethan. That was the killer during that moment. Which, by the way, Ethan is, if that was him, he's a pretty strong individual, because I think there was a point where he pick someone up from the throat and like held them in the air like he was Michael Myers.
That's what
where's the strength on that man? He is a champion.
He picked up Annika, also I will say, I've seen like the actress. She is very tiny. So I'll give you that. But also, Ethan is incredibly scrawny. Not to say he doesn't have the strength, but I was just like, I felt like he would have struggled a little.
He grew up with a bunch of avatars, so I mean, he got a little bit of
that too. Strength. Yeah, he just picked her up by the throat and then just started like, what is going on?
I guess when you put that mask on, my friend, you gain the powers of a god. So but I think it's safe to say, let us know in the chat if you guys agree with us. That was Ethan that was doing the mayhem and the chaos there. But this brings us into, and I forgot to mention earlier, this whole Sam and her boyfriend situation, which, not to poo-poo on these actors, because I do like the girlfriend. I didn't like the detective. I really didn't like Ethan. I thought he was very one note. And Jack Champion, I wasn't a big fan of him in Avatar, but I know he has his fans, and I'm not, I'm glad you guys like him as an actor. But I didn't like him in this one. Then there is the boyfriend, whose name is slipping me at the moment. Was it Danny? Was that his name? Was that the boyfriend?
I thought it was Jason. No, you're right. No, Tony. It's Danny. It's Danny.
Yeah. Okay. I've seen this actor in quite a few projects. He was on a season of Arrow once, and he was also in She-Hulk most recently.
Mm-hmm.
I like him as an actor. He has a nice swag to him. He's a very good comedic actor. I don't know, Yutaka, whatever it was, I think he's from New York. His whole persona in this film, and I think he was literally placed in this film to be like a red herring, that like, oh, it's the boyfriend as usual, but he's looking across the way. Hey. He's a Rocky Balboa. There's someone behind you. Talking about
why didn't he throw something at the window?
He tried calling. I think he ended up texting them. Why not throw anything away? It was kind of a weird staging of it all. But I kind of put that aside because the execution of them putting a ladder from him, I think we jokingly said, who has, this man's living in a, 600 square foot apartment with a ladder the size of a, it's like, how does that ladder fit in your house? Number one, I guess he's a fireman, but he magically gets his, clown ladder to go from one apartment to the next. And that scene, again, we saw briefly in the trailer, but again, talk about execution. That was one of my favorite moments of the movie. And I also thought that that's when they were going to actually maybe kill Mindy, because I was thinking that he was going to, Ethan, or the killer at that time, was going to make his way into the room and push her off. But it was her girlfriend instead. But take it away, man, from your thoughts on Danny, his performance and his role in the film, but also just your thoughts on
he was scene. Eye candy. That's what I look at. Red herring, eye candy. I like
secretly maybe he was in the mix. Was he secretly a killer that never revealed himself?
I think it's funny he never got really into any of the action, but he like. Either way, that ladder sequence was so good, so much fun, because I also too I was like, this does not make any damn sense at all. And also, why do they have to hold it down on one side when somebody should? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna go with it. And it was incredibly tense. Yeah. And that kill, though, oh my God, that was brutal.
She not only got, like we just mentioned, she was stabbed in the gut. I mean, she was gonna die. So she had a noble death. I thought she was gonna actually stay behind and just like leave her dead body in front of the door so Ghostface wouldn't get in.
I did too.
Like, I guess let me try to crawl over here for the effects of the film. But that death was pretty brutal, because not only was she stabbed in the stomach, but then when she falls and then she hits her face on the garbage can, and we see the aftermath. It was like, ooh. And then, of course, I feel bad for Mindy at that point, which, I think we mentioned earlier, the processing of death in all Scream movies. But in this moment, she really didn't process, that she lost her girl, which I don't know how long they were dating, but it seemed like they had a really good relationship.
She did not. I think at the time she was processing it, but later it's like it didn't even happen.
Yeah, I lost my girlfriend yesterday. I guess, I'll find another one by the seventh film. But yeah, again, not to backtrack, but I do really, really enjoy that scene. The intensity was there. Brutality was there. The sense of urgency was there. And it was executed minus a couple little like kind of head scratching moments. I thought ultimately it was a really good scene. But then this leads us into our favorite detective. Wayne finds out that his daughter has died. He's now off the case because he's too close to the case. I've lost my daughter and now my son. I'll give him a little bit of credit. The acting didn't sell it. It was just the idea of like, and in my mind, I'm like, oh, is he the killer or not? But I was like, oh, maybe he's not the killer, because he kind of sold me on his sadness. I don't know if you felt his, him losing his kids. Did you have a moment for him there?
No. Because here's my first thought, because I watch way too much procedural, Law and Order, all this stuff. Yeah. I was like, okay, his daughter's killed. Yes, he'd be off the case, but all the other cops would be consoling him. Yeah. Like, it was just not, he'd walk out like that and there would be a bigger hullabaloo. It would just like, it cracked me up, because I was like, and also for him to try and have this connection with those two, I'm like,
I'm in now. Sense. Let's go kill this fucker.
I was like,
that should have been a red flag for them, especially Sam, that she was so on her P's and Q's this movie that she didn't just like immediately like kind of realize, man, he's kind of moving on pretty quick. Like, of course, maybe, I don't know, maybe this is their logic that he's fueled off of vengeance. He wants to kill the killer now. So maybe they kind of took him off the radar. And plus now he thinks that his daughter died. So it couldn't have been him, because he wouldn't have killed his own daughter. So I guess that might be the reason why they didn't investigate him a little bit further. But I will say, not to jump too far ahead in the ending, but did it make sense to you on how there was no connections to him and Richie, like public knowledge that people would have known that he was Richie's dad? Did Richie have an alias name? Did he have?
They did not answer that at all, and that is a huge plot hole in my opinion.
Like, I would have thought as much media attention was on Sam, that it would have been just as much attention on Richie and who his parents were, and it would have been public knowledge that his dad is a police officer in New York. I don't know if that was maybe. Again, on a rewatch, he would change his name, Richie. I don't know. That was, to me, kind of a head scratcher.
I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to call out the writing staff on that. Yeah. And I love those two guys too.
Yeah.
But that didn't make sense, because it's highly publicized, especially the TikTok generation, all of that. Yeah. I would think his whole family would have been known. Like, it
Gale Weathers. Did she not have done the research to figure that out? Yeah.
She can find this Kate or this later, but she can't.
Slayer. Yeah. That was a little bit of a head scratcher for me, Yutaka. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
And again, maybe when we revisit it, there was maybe like a quick line that I don't even know. Yeah, I don't even know if a quick line would fix that kind of.
Wouldn't the FBI have known too?
FBI, Kirby now with FBI, they have more information than than the police in most cases. So
it makes sense unless Richie was already killing people prior, And so I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think in my head, like, how is that just not common knowledge that that's his son?
He's
Or
associated with the son. Yeah. Well, I guess we'll wait for the director's cut or the commentary on that, or if the directors are watching that, maybe it's a question they'll answer one day. But no, as we go from there, they come up with the elaborate plan to again revisit Scream 2, which again Mindy calls out of like the van and circulating the call. But then this is where we kind of lead into another one of my favorite. I was going to say kills, but it wasn't a kill; it was a fake out kill, and that is Gale Weathers. And I jokingly talked about it. Gale, she's once you go black, you never go back. She's dating a black guy now who we don't see except for him on the floor dead. Which I wish, again, talk about another character that loses someone. There was no grieving for her at all. She was like, yep, he's just a bunch of muscles. He was just a side piece or whatever. I guess she didn't really care about him, which again makes me wonder that scene, again, going back to who the Ghostface killer was. That was Quinn, if I'm not mistaken, because at the end of the movie, she tells Sam it felt so good to stab Gale. So wait a minute, you're telling me that Quinn was able to take down this, seamlessly 6 foot, whatever, 200 plus.
Yeah, he was massive.
Yeah. So, but I guess there were 2 Ghostface killers in that Gale scene, wasn't there? If I'm not mistaken. No,
not that I remember.
Because I'm going back to the scene. Because someone had to be on the phone with her because she was on the phone talking to Ghostface, and you would have assumed that the Ghostface would have been rumbling around while he was killing the boyfriend. So there had to be 2 Ghostfaces there.
It's possible that, but I mean, it wasn't the detective because he was still left.
He was doing, so it could have. I guess it could have been Quinn.
It had to be Quinn because her brother was in the van.
Well, oh, you're right. You're right. Yeah. So how did that work? Because again, I'll have to rewatch this.
She is not that tall.
She's not that tall. She must be quick as hell because she was on the phone with Gale and killing her boyfriend when she was because the Ghostface took the boyfriend as like Dewey. He was talking about egging Gale on, talking about Dewey. So yeah, how did she do? Unless Ghostface was on the phone and they didn't know. Because going back to this. The detective Wayne, they took his car, so he wasn't with them when they drove to Gale. So I guess he could have been the one on the phone with Gale while Quinn was doing the murdering.
Well, sense? I think Quinn originally. Oh, no, because
not Quinn. I'm saying
that's
Quinn.
what doesn't make sense because
Quinn was in the truck.
We saw Detective. Ethan was in the truck.
Yeah, Ethan's in the truck.
Detective Bailey's walking in the park, but he's not on the phone, but he's got his earpiece in. And then Gale gets called and they trace it to Gale's apartment.
Right. So at that point, Detective Wayne is uncalled for because they took his car.
Yeah, but he still wasn't on the phone, even though the call was already still happening.
Well, the Gale phone call is like later in the day because it's like nighttime.
Oh, so okay. Then, it could have been.
Yeah. Okay. So he could have. So again, and let us know at home. We're assuming that Wayne was on the phone with Gale while Quinn was the one doing the murdering, and our boy champion Ethan was in the van. So I think that's how we're trying to be Sherlock Holmes and figure out where people were and count for. So, but anyway, the scene we see it play out very tense. I thought Yutaka that we were going to lose Gale. It was going to be another legacy character, very much a Star Wars. We lose Han in Force Awakens, we lose Luke in Last Jedi, and now we're gonna lose Gale. But Yutaka, this is again one of my negatives. They keep her alive just to probably bring her back for the 7th and having all the characters, Avengers Endgame style, facing Ghostface. I thought that took away from the sense of urgency, took away from the stakes that any of these characters, as they established within this movie, that anyone and everyone can die, but yet it was just the secondary kind of forgettable characters besides Mindy's girlfriend, who are really like everyone else was just kind of like, Did they make a mistake in not killing Gale?
Because that kill was kind of fun. About that.
Yeah, the stab.
But yeah. I did enjoy that one. Just right.
That was a good kill. Yeah.
So I will say this is probably my favorite chase scene that they've done. That was really good. That was tense. And I enjoyed that because I think the sound and the soundtrack or score during that time was phenomenal.
Did they bring up Dewey's score too when they brought up Dewey? Yeah.
The one thing that see, this is why they should have killed Gale, which I know a lot of people are going to be upset. But she has that great line of saying,
He did.
"Tell Sidney he didn't get me."
Yep.
I was like, that is like,
Yep.
it takes away from that, and especially since they shouldn't have said she has a faint pulse. They should have just cut away
Left
or
it up
something.
for the audience to be like, is she alive? Is she
Exactly.
Yep.
Wait until the end to like do that reveal then. But I'm wondering too, maybe they hadn't decided yet too, because they easily could have just said, but
yeah.
I just
Ooh, that would have been such a good little. We'll talk about the post-credit scene that they gave us, but that would have been great if we would have ended with her in a hospital and then a Ghostface comes into the hospital and kills her off. That would have been like a very dark kind of ending.
That would be so mean. I would love it.
Be.
That would work for this movie though, because again,
Right?
This movie was brutal.
Very much so. Yeah.
Because Gale also is another. She got cut the F up.
She got stabbed, and again, she got stabbed in the stomach, and I thought she got stabbed in the leg, yeah.
Yep.
She got,
and that stab in the stomach was like that huge shard of glass or table that like just.
It was like you said, it was intense, and I do wish to complete that scene, like you said, it would have been a perfect ending for her to, number one, she fought for her life. She had the gun. Yeah. She went toe to toe with the Ghostface, and I thought that would have been a perfect way to send off the character. But I assume with her being still on the table that they're either, I think if we see her, which we will see her again in the 7th, that I think they're saving her death for the 7th, if not keeping her alive. But I'm pretty sure they're going to probably kill her. I wouldn't be surprised if she's like the opening death of a Scream 7, just to kind of
that would be a
really
gag.
Open up the
that would
really
be
open up the stage.
Ooh,
we'll see.
That would be so good.
Again, like you said, the scene was great. It's just I think they should have just gone ahead and just fully put the foot to the gas and kill her in that moment. But hey, let us know in the comments, guys, if you guys are happy Gale's still alive. Of course, listen, me and Yutaka are happy she's still here, but I think we both agree they should have just probably just killed her off.
Story perspective, it would have again. It would have amped up the stakes and the emotional value. I would have been pissed, but it would have made me love this movie even more, because I'm like, oh, you guys aren't pulling punches. Like, technically they're not supposed to. So
yep, I agree. But let us know in the chat, guys. And as we kind of pivot into the 3rd act and just kind of rehashing or bringing up a point I forgot to mention, in the 2nd act, we're introduced to the strime of the Ghostface killers that were under the anonymous name of Jason, who died earlier in the film, and his boyfriend. And, they have all the face, the mask, and they have all the memorabilia from all the Scream films, which ties us into our 3rd act. The idea now is to have the cop comes up with the idea, or Kirby actually comes up with the idea of using this shrine as like a bait to bring in the killer, and having a kill box and all that stuff. And we get our setup here, Tara, and how can I forget? I'm jumping way too far ahead. The train sequence, one of my favorite scenes of the entire film. As they're leading up to the idea, Yutaka, take it away, man. Again, New York being a character within itself, and you hear so many horror stories of people on trains and stuff happening, and people
won't do anything.
Nothing. You see it all the time. Fights on trains, killings on trains. There's so much going on trains. This scene, man, again, we saw it in the trailer, but it was actually not as much shown as it was.
They cut it differently in the trailer than how it was in the film. So I like that.
Yep. And the way, so we get split up. We get Sam's boyfriend, and we get Sam and Tara and Chad, and get split up from Mindy and Ethan's character. And take it away, man. What did you think about the Bodega scene? And it goes back to, should they have killed Mindy?
Okay, so this train sequence, as much as I am a huge proponent for like protect Mindy at all costs, save Mindy at all costs.
Yep.
This scene again, I'm happy. I will still say I'm happy they didn't, because I was furious when they killed off Randy. So that being said, though, this sequence was so good. It like with obviously the lights. I mean, on the subway, and then at times when they did like the flashes of the red and the blue, and that was really so good with just how. And we know that was, well, we don't know. Well, I'm assuming that was it was Quinn.
I was going to say, who is the killer in that moment? It was
the way that Ghostface was just maneuvering, and that. It was so intense, and then you still have that little comedic element, because every time she'd look over, she'd be mad at that Ethan. She's like,
"Get out of here! Stop following me!" Yeah.
So it was really good. But then when she got stabbed, here's my thing. Nobody was paying attention. They could have just offed her.
Yeah.
And Ethan, clearly in on it, goes and like, oh, I'm gonna call 911. Like, get help.
Yeah, it's like call 911. Very confused by that. Very, very confused because he could have just had the final blow. Because, like you said, I think it was his sister that probably did the killing. Because he wouldn't be able to take off his mask and all that stuff. And like, oh, so yeah, it was definitely Quentin that.
The fact help? That he's exactly, and then we'll get to this point, but that cut was so deep. She would be in the OR getting stitched up. There is not a quick recovery like we saw. That bothered me.
Logic
again, overly critical, but
we seen 6 or 5 films with Dewey getting stabbed in every Scream movie and somehow making it out alive. Especially, I think the most brutal was probably Scream 2 when he was jacked up in the studio. Ooh. I don't know how he survived that. I guess we'll talk about Chad. Chad maybe learned a thing or two for surviving. But I'm totally with you. That stab was not only just in the stomach, but I'm not mistaken. Quinn, she twisted the knife in her stomach. Yeah, that's a death blow to me. And like you just mentioned, why in the world would Ethan go over to her to help her? Someone that now I'm thinking about that makes no sense for him to make that action. Because not at that point, it's like, why are you trying to show that you are not the bad guy? Because we're entering the third act and everything's kind of going according to plan. So that's a head scratcher.
And the other folks wouldn't have known because she wasn't answering her phone. Nobody would have. It was very baffling unless that was more of just a, hey, we're going to leave a survivor. So then which now that I think about it, maybe that she could be like, Ethan was there, He
was there. It couldn't have been him. Because, you're totally right. Because she does say in that scene, oh, I was wrong again. Because she now is Ethan saved me. You're right. That's maybe the angle we were taking.
Why did it didn't make sense. It truly did not. I was just like, I mean, I'm happy she's alive, but I was just like,
right. Very true.
Story-wise, this is awkward. But again, there's a more one that I think is more
outrageous one coming very soon, which let's just jump right into it. The plan is to now have the kill box and the boyfriend goes away, which I'm like, okay, is he involved in that? And ultimately he isn't, but they get the setup, they go to the shrine, and we have it all played out. And now Wayne is convincing them that Kirby's involved, that she set them all up. And while that, I guess even before that's happening, how did you feel about the Chad and Tara relationship as far as how they're and now there's I'm trying to remember they're in the same age group, not in real life. I'm talking about in the narratively.
They were. I thought they were in the same class.
Okay,
like in the
Tara
same
was a senior.
Yeah,
and he was a senior. Okay, but anyway, I'm just thinking of an age rise. I know sometimes people get very, rightfully so when there's like,
I honestly think they were in the same grade, and I think it's just because she looks so young.
Which I think is the thing she'll always.
I kind of liked that. I mean,
that angle that they took.
And maybe maybe Tara's the new Gale and he's the new Dewey. I don't know.
I think so.
I liked that. It was nice to see them understand that they're still grieving and they need to process it. Mm-hmm. But maybe it's easier to process it with someone. So I liked that.
Yeah.
I didn't mind that.
Yeah, and they play it out well. Again, he's a good enough, charming individual that and I don't know if they didn't plant the seeds in the 5th one because he had a girlfriend, and like I said, Tara was in the hospital for half of the film, so they didn't really establish it there, but they established it pretty early on in this film with him saving her from that douchebag at the party. But they're having a conversation, and the conversation ends up turning to what I thought was like, okay, we passed on the Gale death, we passed on the Mindy death. Now they're going to kill someone, a part of the core 4, and we're left to believe that Chad was killed, Yutaka, because not only does he get stabbed up from the first Ghostface, but then this is when we learn that there are 2 Ghostfaces before we get the 3rd one, and they're going ham. Each of them are taking stabs on each side, like it's a teddy bear or something, or a punching bag.
I wanted to try and count, but they were going too fast. That's how many times he was being stabbed.
It reminded me, I don't know if you're a Marvel fan, if you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy 2, but Drax inside of that monster and how he was just picking away. I'm like, yeah, Chad's dead, man. He's a dead dude. pretty good death. That would have been another great death because he was, helping her out, and it's a Dewey-ish type of moment. And we'll get to it. But the man's still alive. How is this man still alive?
I don't.
The power of love. The power of love.
It was a good scene because I love that was another like mini chase scene. But I liked how the three of them teamed up on the one. And so Sam and Tara pin Ghostface. He punches, then kicks, and then that's what we see. And I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah. And like when they both clean the blade at the same time, I have to give that. I was just like, that's
choreography
awesome.
Was great. Yes, it was like kind of like in the moment, like it was very like.
I was just like, I'm nerding out at just seeing.
It was perfect. That was spot on. I would assume the siblings were doing the killings there, which I guess too. Not to leave. I was gonna say not to leave out that other element, but there are 3 groups of siblings that we're seeing and how siblings handle kind of trauma with the Carpenters,
think about that.
The twins, and then now with the Quinn and Ethan. So there is like this interesting kind of not commentary, but interesting kind of duality in like these characters and how they handle brother and sister relationships. And we see the most extreme side of a brother and sister relationship gone wrong, which, hey, who knows? Scream 7, we might see the Carpenter sisters go on a little killing spree. We'll get into that. I can't
wait to talk about that because I already have an idea.
So we'll get into that, but kind of get into the third act of it all. And listen, before I give my criticisms here, it is a trope that we've seen in every single Scream film. Every villain makes their big announcement. They have a big a monologue, and it's like mustache twirling energy, where I always feel like the screams on the phone seem to be more intellectual, seem to have a better game plan. They seem to be 10 steps ahead. But then when you meet the killer, it's like a whole new different person of a sense, because they're now like, it's almost like they're taking like a potion and like a evil scientist. And this brings me to what I didn't like about that third act. It was the performances. I felt, especially from Wayne Bailey, when he reveals himself and he's like he's on drugs. He's just like, you killed my son. And he reveals, and again, we talked about the plot hole of like, wait,
he took it to a 20.
It was a bit much for me. And he reveals in a moment that, and I do like to, it's moments within the moment that is, I didn't like the reveal, and kind of the motivations to me were very thin. And again, very much kind of rehashing Scream 2. It's a parent grieving the loss of their kid and blaming it on the survivor, which was Neve Campbell, Sidney in Scream 2 with Billy's mom. This time it's Richie's dad. So again, a lot of Scream 2-isms going on here. But again, and I do like when they had the Richie film playing in the background. That was kind of a nice little touch of his film finally being made, and his parents or his family being in the mix. But I don't know, Yutaka, it kind of took me out of it because I was just trying to, as he was telling his story, I'm trying to like, this number one, it feels rehashed from Scream 2. And it just, the motives, it didn't make sense to me, because
motive to me,
you're a police officer, you take a duty of like protect and serve. Your son was a killer. Like, regardless of how much you loved your son, he killed people, viciously murdered people. But yet in your mind, you've come up with this idea that he knows it wasn't, he even admits it wasn't Sam, but yet he wants vengeance. And then he brings his kids into it. Like, it was like, what?
That just mind boggled me, because again, when he admits he's like, yeah, Richie was a killer. I know Richie was a killer. I'm like, what?
So what are we doing here? If you know your son's a killer, what are you doing?
Am so baffled. And then how did you manipulate, or just, again, this could be a really messed up family, but you've got your 2 kids who are clearly
promising, young, in school. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm just like, it did not, to me, I was just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think why I was let down is because I thought the opening was just so fantastic, and I was not expecting that. And you just pulled the rug out from under me. I wanted that even if the reveal started to make sense at the end, give me a motive that just would have been like, oh, damn, I didn't see that coming. Yeah. I would have been happy with that. But this motive, unfortunately for me, I was just like, ooh.
Yeah, it's not the worst. I
But
give Scream 3 is the worst one to me because that's like a complete out of
out of left field. They
yeah,
didn't
that
plant any of the
half brother of a mom and you stole my that Scream 3 is my least favorite of all the Screams, just to put that out there. But anyway, let us know in the chat.
It's mine too, but only for other things. But it's got one of the best characters ever.
yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. And also it has one of the worst haircuts I've ever seen in cinema. With Gale.
That too.
His haircut is atrocious. But let us know in the chat, guys. How did you feel about the motives, plot holes? Did you feel it was just justified of his actions, getting his kids involved? Which I don't know if they have a Scream 7. The mom is going to be the one getting visions of her husband. I think
it's the Carpenter's mom. I felt like they made a couple lines to alluded.
Ooh,
I was just like, wait a second, we've never met the mom, and they could do a really good like stunt.
Yeah, we talked about there's something like, with the mom
that could be really good.
That'll be nice. We'll put it a pin in next. I definitely want to hear your thoughts on again where a seventh one can go. But he gives this reveal, and this is where again I tried to not let it bring me down because there were moments I like being one of those moments again going back to chase sequences. Mm-hmm. Seeing the Carpenter sisters team up, Tara being, ramped up and hyped up with her sister, like, are you ready? We got to do this. And I mean, they go to work with those, she bashes Quinn's face in, her teeth are on the floor. And I love
good.
Oh, man, I love that moment. And not to jump too far ahead, but when Sam puts that knife in Ethan's mouth, again, I'm not the biggest Jack champion.
Oh, that was fan. Tara. Yeah. Like
Tara, yeah. When she's was it Tara that killed him?
Yeah, you're right. She's like, let me go.
And she took a stab. Yeah, that was badass. Again, the Carpenter sisters were almost pretty much flawless for me. They did no wrong for me in this film. But yes, you're so right. That was Jenna. She did such a great job. And I love the sense of kind of sinisterness in both sisters where she's like looking at like, yeah, let me go. And she gives her a knife. And then we get, the tilt of the head from Sam. And I think you mentioned it when we saw it on the night that it was a little bit kind of over the top that
it was
after she kills Quinn, the father's now upset and he has a fully loaded gun. Well, not fully loaded, but enough rounds to kill someone. He runs at her with his gun in the air instead of for shooting her. That didn't make sense. Unless he was out of bullets. I don't know. Maybe he was.
No, he wasn't, because when he fell, the gun went off.
You're right.
That's how I know there was a bullet. Like, so for me, the third act was kind of clunky.
Yes.
Even though there was some great, like you said,
good moments.
Seeing the Carpenters fight back that was great. And then I really enjoyed when same thing, like when Sam headshot Quinn, I was like, fuck yeah, absolutely. But then there's Detective Bailey who just saw his daughter get a headshot, and Sam charges him with just with nothing because the gun was empty.
Yeah.
And
she didn't have a gun too.
Instead of just like the story could have worked if he shot her and she fell over, like
which I think
the charge.
The moment in the trailer, but I think they took him out because they didn't want to show the killers. There is a moment where she falls in the trailer, and I guess that was the moment.
That was very like, I'm like, guys, okay, now that's a bit much. All right.
He might be up there with Scream 3 killer. Was it Roman? Was that his name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he might be one of the worst Scream killers in the franchise. Is Mr. Wayne Bailey, Detective Wayne Bailey,
which is a shame because I love the actor, but I was just like, your character was not it for me.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that we weren't a fan of with the character. But as we wrap up the movie, Kirby, she also got shot, but she's okay. Again, it's like there has to be hopefully that all these main characters, legacy characters we come to love, them making it out of this film has a good payoff, and not necessarily a payoff because they're going to die in the next one, but I hope that there's a reason why they kept them alive. Like give them some really awesome stuff to justify why you let them survive being shot, stabbed, and everything above.
Oh my goodness.
Which brings us into the most, again, one of the craziest reveals. The twist of this film is that Chad is alive, as we talked about. He is, Mindy finds out. She rushes over because she heard, obviously she wants to make sure her brother's okay. She's probably, I think she even says she's hooked up. She was a bunch of drugs in her. So she's probably, not feeling any of the pain.
She would not be running like that. I did not believe that.
All the drugs, if that was the case. But it's revealed because we see Tara, she's starting to tear up. She's the only one that's like grieving because she has a moment to breathe. And she's like, oh, Chad, she died for me. And it's like, wait, we have one more. And they pull him out. Very similar to Scream 5. It's a very similar kind of reveal. He's alive. He is alive. And not only is he like, he's literally awake, right? You think the man
I don't get, no, that just was not.
That was a head scratcher. That was a head scratcher. But we end with Sam and her father's mask. And, you know, Tara comes on. What are you doing? Oh, I'm good. But we and again, that was one of the things that I definitely enjoyed about that they still touch on her psyche. I don't know if I like the Billy mirror reflection scenes.
If you can't, if you don't have the money to do the CGI, you didn't need to do it. You could have used it. He could have done a voiceover, and I would have been happy.
I would say just have her in the head. Just put them in the head.
Yep.
Have her inside inner monologues, battling her inner demons with herself. But to have him, literally the only time you showed him was reflection off of a glass mirror,
and it's again bad CGI.
It is.
It's like 3,000 zoom filters on him.
Because the reason they're doing that is because she never saw her dad older, so she wouldn't know what her dad looked like older.
True. That's true.
So I guess that's the only reason they keep doing that. But I mean, I can suspend my disbelief. They want to just have the actor have him look the way he can shave and try to.
And I would be fine with that. Yeah, because you know he's aged nicely, and I would be okay with that. Like, I will say, speaking of Sam, this was probably my favorite killing of a Ghostface, though.
Oh yeah,
when she dons the suit, the mask. I was like, okay. I was like, Good call. I guess my eyes, I was like, okay, I'm going to forget everything I just hated about this film for a minute and just enjoy this. And it was so satisfying.
It was, I think you're right, man. I definitely agree. I mean, Sidney mask, it wasn't on as much as Scream 1 when she killed Billy. But like you said, for her to fully embrace her dad's side and to stab him, I lost count. At least because she stabbed Richie, she said 22 or 21 times. I definitely think she doubled that. She was like, I'm gonna stab you, I'm gonna count your kids in, give them a couple stabs, I'm gonna give Richie a couple. She went in, man. She went in on the worst killer of maybe one of the worst killers. So he deserved.
Like, I'm not, or I forgot the line she said, but then she's like, you know what? No, you fucked with my family.
Yeah, exactly.
And stabs him in the eye.
Yes.
I was like,
good call. Okay, that was a very good kill. And then I guess it almost got undercut when Ethan, he's still alive. Did they shoot? Kirby shoots him right in the head.
No, this made me chuckle.
Shoot the wood. Oh yes, go ahead.
The TV on the
TV. Which probably was a fake. Was it a fake TV, like a made up TV? So I don't know if
it looked fake, but
he managed to knock him out or kill him. I assume he's dead. Yeah.
Which, the whole reason it killed Stu was because it electrocuted him.
Yeah.
This didn't. Like what?
Yeah.
Again, I'll suspend disbelief because it made me laugh.
The whole Stu is alive thing. There's probably more weight to Ethan being alive. In that moment, and maybe being taken into custody or escaping.
That would be wild. I wouldn't mind. I guess. I don't know. I still like the idea that they. Well, we'll talk about when we talk about 7. But yeah, that was probably the most satisfying ending of a Ghostface. Also because yes, Detective Bailey was possibly the worst. Like I was so happy to see that happen.
Yeah, he. Again, I don't condone violence of any sorts, but when it's in the movie world, he deserved every stab, plus more. But we wrap up with that reveal. Kirby's still good. She's a good guy. She wasn't a rogue that he made up the story to be, and she didn't set it all up. And we see, again, the mask. She leaves it there, alluding to that there's still, we can all admit, Sam enjoyed those killings. She definitely has her father's blood in her. Now, as far as it goes, we'll see with Scream 7, which we'll get into our thoughts here. But wrapping up this kind of overall general impressions, and then also too, I think we've kind of alluded to a lot of the stuff that didn't work for us, some of the plot holes, some of the characters. So I don't think we have to really focus on that too much, unless you have any other things that you didn't.
No, that was the biggest. As far as the negatives, to me was the biggest thing. It was the writing, even though this is one of the most enjoyable films.
Yeah. I think I've heard you say, again, going back to your, again, check out Yutaka's information, check out their review. But in your review, I think you mentioned, and this is why I personally still think I have Scream 5 over Scream 6. I think even though this was more entertaining, I definitely agree with you. I would prefer better writing over entertainment purposes, as far as like style over. And not saying this was like a style over substance debate, but I would take the substance that I think we got.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is a little bit stylized at that point, but I would take a more well-rounded story and script versus, entertainment, gore, kill. And sometimes I just want that sometimes, but
there
I
could
will
be, you can have both.
balance.
That's the thing. Like,
which I think Scream 5 ultimately. I
Scream
had fun with
5
Scream 5.
Yeah, it was concise. It was well written. I just think the trailers spoiled it forever, like all the good twists. But I really enjoyed Scream 5 because, again, love letter to Wes, help bridging to something new. And this one, it's Radio Silence making their own mark now. But they could have, it could have been a tighter, like, if you would have taken out like bits here and made there was a lot that didn't work. And it was more of the scenes that sadly didn't have Ghostface at times. Because I felt like some of the scenes might have been a little filler, but
there are definitely scenes that come to mind. Like I said, it's kind of fillers, and we're sitting on the back of an ambulance, or a lot of dead space in a couple moments.
The core four line, just
the core four. Oh man, but yeah, those we talked about a lot of our positives, a lot of our negatives. But the one thing I did want to bring up that I mentioned earlier, and just to kind of get your thoughts and everyone in the comments, recently Creed 3 is out in theaters, and one of my biggest, and it wasn't even a criticism, it was just something that I noticed as far as the absence of a key character, legacy character like Rocky Balboa not being a part of the Creed franchise, and feeling like he was missed in one particular scene. I don't want to spoil that scene here because we're not talking Creed, but this kind of brings me back to just far as like the absence of Sidney Prescott. Do you feel as though narratively her absence was justified, or do you feel like there was maybe a scene? And by the way, she was mentioned in the film that she's heard about the killing. She took her and her family off to somewhere safe, and that's why she's not involved. So I do like that they at least acknowledge that, and they also said something too, kind of like
she deserves her happy ending.
Yeah, kind of like,
and that character really does.
She does. So the question is, do you think she was missed in this narrative, or was needed?
Well, I'll always. I mean, I love Nevin. I'll always miss Sidney, but I think from a story perspective, I don't think her character would have worked in that. Like,
I agree.
One, they never state where she truly lives. So wherever she's living, to the fact that she's going to abandon her 2 kids, her husband, to come hunt Ghostface in a city that technically, at the time, it doesn't concern her, because now
it really doesn't. Yeah.
It's really about those who killed Richie. Now, it doesn't mean that they won't later target Sidney.
Go to her, yeah.
But I think at the current point in time, this whole thing was, I want to kill the person who killed Richie, which was Sam, and then Tara. So I don't think it would have worked, and it would have just. I think about how the final act was, and I'm just like, if they would have tried to toss in Sidney somewhere, it would have seemed very out of place.
Surprise! I've been here.
Yeah, it would not have been. If they're going to have Sidney continue on, I think the 7th would be a great time. But I do think in this one, no. And originally, I don't even think 4 she was supposed to have the huge role that she did.
Yeah, you're right. I remember reading that somewhere that Wes Craven had mentioned. It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of behind the stuff, a lot of behind the scenes stuff. I think even bringing up that terrible Scream 3 again, I think there was supposed to be a reveal. There was supposed to be 2 killers initially. It was, I think it was Roman's girlfriend at one point. But they ended up changing that kind of fourth quarter. So, but I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm very curious. And I know, as Yutaka mentioned, they get to interview, directors and actors. And if I'm not mistaken, do you have a interview lined up with the directors?
Not possibly yet. We're working on it. So
fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Like the one thing I'll say, fingers crossed. Radio Silence, I love them because they're the most accessible when it comes to either fans or people who want to speak with them about their craft. And even though if I state about this film that some things may have missed the mark, I think those guys are awesome. And they're just
everything
really
you said is not
cool.
any bad. It's just criticism. We're not coming at them as people, individuals. Yeah, it's just. some criticism.
It's because of them we got to even be on the press junket the last time. So I am
Mhm.
eternally grateful for that experience and just to still be able to get to speak with them about
Yeah.
Scream. So yeah, no,
Well,
I'm hoping we get to, because
we'll put it out in the ether that you will get the interview with them. And if you do get that chance, which I know you will, I would be curious to know, and you could throw this question in, you say a fan question. If Sidney Prescott was initially like if the whole pay thing was an issue, and she would have been a part of it, I wonder if they would even answer how would she have played in this sixth film? Like what would have been her role? Because I can't even imagine where she would have fit in this movie narratively, because like you just mentioned, she's off with her kids and her family. Why in the hell was she come? And again, we don't know where she is in proximity to New York, but why would she risk her life getting involved? And like you said, where would she have been? Like, what character that I don't think they probably, I don't even know where she would have fit in the movie, where I'm getting
the
at.
only thing I can think about would, in this, it would have been like a glorified cameo at the end, maybe by Gale's side.
At the
Truthfully,
hospital, yeah. If they would have
or it
shown.
had Gale actually been murdered, like actually perished, and then
Then
maybe
Sidney
there's
kind of
some
gets in.
time in between that and the showdown, but there wasn't. So
Right.
that's the only place I could see that her character would fit,
Yeah, that
and
makes
I
sense.
would feel like that's a cheap, it would just be cheap,
Yeah.
because then everybody would be like,
Now
why
just
didn't you
too
have
much
Sydney in
fan
the rest of the
service.
film? Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
I
if
agree.
you're, I want her to come back for 7. I hope they do right by her, but when I think about the story and just how it played out narratively, I don't
You're
think
right.
it would have.
You're totally right. And to your point, I think that would have probably been the only gateway, unless they would have had to redo the whole film. Because
Yeah.
outside of that, which you just mentioned, killing Gale, her coming back to the mix because she obviously lost Dewey. She now lost Gale. Now kind of makes sense. This is, even though I wasn't personally involved, you've now hurt, this now
Mm-hmm.
two of my best friends, close friends, and this survival, Ghostface survival killings. She probably would have came in then, and then maybe she would have been the Kirby killing the Ethan at the end, potentially, if she would have got that far to the mix. So yeah, that's the only way I can see her evolve outside of them just
Yeah.
completely rewriting this whole film.
Also, she's married to Mark Kincaid, a cop. You think that man would let her? Like, there's just some, like, there's story points that I'm just like, I don't see it working.
Yeah,
And truthfully, also, yeah, some characters deserve a happy ending. Like,
yeah,
again, I don't know. Like,
we'll see.
I mean, I'll still watch any Scream if you keep, as long as they keep staying consistent. I'll keep going
Mhm.
out there and seeing them.
I hear you. I hear you. And that actually kind of brings me, before we actually get into what's next with Scream, just any final thoughts about the film? I know we kind of hit on all of our points. I know, again, you could check out their review to get his score. And he also has another spoiler review coming out. But any final thoughts before we get into what we want to see next and wrap it all up? Any overall thoughts about this Scream 6? And I know you have another video as far as your rankings. This is fall in the top 3,
I
the bottom
don't
3.
know, because I need to re-see it, and that's so
Yeah.
this, like, even talking, I might tweak my score a little bit up, because I'm if there's one thing that I will say that I took away from this film, I had a blast
Yeah.
talking about it. I'm having a blast,
Yeah.
and I can't wait. I'm seeing it again tomorrow night.
Nice.
Like,
Nice.
I've already have tickets. I want to see it
Yeah.
because I want to make sure. Do I really feel that way?
Mhm.
But also, one thing, kudos to all the Easter eggs,
So many.
for
So many.
Scream fans or just
Yeah.
horror fans. Like, there was
Yes.
some really great things out there. So I want to
Mhm.
see, does it hold up now that I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to sit and see it play out?
That's a great point. Yeah.
Do I sit there and, like, because I'm not going to lie, y'all, I did roll my eyes at sometimes during this film, and I
Me and
felt
Yutaka
bad doing
looked.
that.
I remember we looked at each other. I looked. I turned at you and looked at when they revealed that Chad was alive. I
We were
said,
back.
"What the fuck? What?" I did. Yeah, that was a moment I more
So
than
I
rolled
want
my
to
eyes.
see if if I'm just like, but other than
Yeah.
that, it's still, my score. I'm still gonna keep the same
Yeah.
at 3.5, but it could change. I need to see it again.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat with you, and also too. I think it doesn't always influence my score, both negatively or positively, but I would imagine seeing it with a opening night crowd as a much, and this isn't taking anything away from
No,
how
that's
we
true.
saw, with our critics, fellow critics, but 99% of the time, everyone's kind of reserved. Everyone's kind of, keeping to themselves, not jumping out of their seats or whatnot. So that does somewhat impact your experience with the film. So I will say that my enhancement of, I don't think this film goes down for me. Like I'm pretty solid at like the bottom of the lowest I'll go with this is a 3.5, which is the score I gave it in my review. So I don't see it going lower than that, but I could see it going higher again. Whether you're watching it with the crowd, whether you maybe we missed the Easter eggs or maybe missed a line that might have explained certain plot holes, which I don't think it will, but you never know. But you might, I might grow to appreciate something a little bit more. So I only see this film either staying the same or maybe going up a couple notches potentially. So I think the last point I want to wrap this thing up on. And again, thank you to everyone watching up to this point. Like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Theory hats on. What next, Mr. Yutaka? Again, as we're recording this, there is an article out there now from Screen Rant, or one of the big outlets has said that it's been greenlit, but it hasn't been officially greenlit. We haven't heard anything from Paramount or the directors. I know they were on the red carpet saying that, we have plenty, we would love to do another one. We have a story if we get the opportunity based on the box office, which as of right now is tracking to be the highest grossing opening of any Scream film, which makes a lot of sense with how horror's kind of been regenerated. It was a good 2022 film. It doesn't hurt that Jenna Ortega, her stock has rise since the last time we saw her. So I definitely expect some Wednesday fans to help that box office. But assuming that we do get a Scream 7, probably coming out next year around this time, where would you want to see it go? We talked about maybe staying in New York. We talked about maybe, which I guess if you want to throw your theory as far as the Carpenter mother reveal, how they're going to play that out. Who's the next killer? What's the next motives? Hopefully it's better than this one. Where do we go from here?
I wouldn't mind it just, okay. For me, either, this sounds silly, but either have it be a real silly, like either dumb it all the way down.
Surprise sister, brother somewhere.
Or just make it incredibly complex, but a good payoff. Because the fact that we still have never seen the Carpenter's mother, I would love that.
That has to be a big reveal. That has to be there, like piece in the whole kind of back pocket. Yeah.
The other thing, because it's still such a big theme throughout 5 and 6, mental health, I wouldn't mind, and maybe it's too obvious though, but again, maybe they're in therapy and maybe they've got just this therapist that is just, I want to, this is only going to boost my profile. So I'm taking all these notes and I'm going to recreate something, because regardless of what it is, somebody's recreating it. So I wouldn't mind that aspect, because that could, because again, I did like in this one where she finally unleashes all of what she's been holding in, and the therapist is like, nope, I'm calling, calling, but I'm reporting this guy. I would love to see something like that. And I think also I want to say it was George or Liam, but both of them, one or the other, they were like, let's get a calm killer. Not somebody who's so erratic. Let's get somebody who's just so like, that's why I kind of love the opening, because that dude was casual about it. And that was so shocking and refreshing. So give us something like, I don't know, but I don't necessarily think it needs to be tied to family. In fact, I wouldn't even mind, because they've already also opened the door with the whole like Reddit situation, or just toxicity, like misinformation. You've planted the seeds. Let's have like somebody who has no connections, just wants to keep this up, and that makes the suspect list larger, and
it also makes it a little bit more scarier. Like the fact, and that's why I love Halloween. Michael isn't just the origins of of him is just like, if you're in my way, I'm just gonna like. And that's one of the things I love about 2018, when he's just goes into that person's house and just kills them just because they're there. And that's Stranger is another one of my favorite horror films. It's just like, why are you doing this? Because you were home and you answered the door. So that almost makes it just as scary.
Like again, and that's a very like just simple motive, but it's so effective. So that's why like I would rather see those two extremes in a sense, because I don't think we've gotten that just yet.
Yep, I agree. I'm right there with you. Again, I jokingly told you at the theater the whole Sam and Tara mom being like Jamie Lee Curtis as their mom
Oh my
coming into
god,
the
I would
mix would
die.
be mind-boggling. But then, there has to be something with the mother. The reason they haven't revealed her, and they tell us in this film that she's kind of cut off all ties with Tara because, well, not with Sam because, and then Tara cut it off because she wasn't talking to her. So there has to be some reveal with that. So I'm very interested if they lean that route. I don't know if they're going to go as far as saying the mom's the killer because that wouldn't.
Hey, maybe the mom just
Why?
wants to kill Sam because there was never that strong relationship. Because technically, too, Sam is the reason their dad left.
Yeah.
So there's which also we don't know who this stepdad. Like, there's just
there's a
so
couple other,
much.
the parental,
There's
the lack of Carpenter extended family is definitely a mystery box, which would be interested to
like I'm
maybe
just
explore. Yeah,
they could do
we'll
something
see.
fun with that.
I think so. And then as far as any other, I think we talked. Yes, if you're going to keep it in New York, I'll be interested to see how they bring Nev Campbell back in the mix. And now we have not only Sidney is still alive, Gale's still alive, Kirbys still alive, and then obviously our core four is still alive. So yeah, I like where your head's at as far as just make it as simple as possible or as complex, but having a good payoff to it. And I don't know if they lean into, as you just kind of mentioned, the mental health of Sam being the killer. Like, do they lean
Now, see, I
into
wouldn't be
that
upset with that too,
with the
because
Scream 7?
I feel like they're planting some seeds.
And going back to how much we love the opening, I mean, that would be a completely 360 or 180 of we know Sam's the killer from the very beginning. And we're just like
Oh my
watching the
gosh.
rest of the film of them just, trying to figure it, but like it's been Sam the whole time. So like we see a Scream film from the perspective of the killer, the whole movie.
That is like, well, if you haven't read this
That's
book,
a
I'm
tough
sorry,
thing.
y'all.
Yeah.
Murder of Roger Ackroyd, Agatha Christie novel, and the entire time you're reading the book, it's being told from his perspective, who you then find out at the end he's the murderer. So you could give us a Scream film where it's from Ghostface's perspective and not even let us know that it's her, but then in the end we find out because of the narrative we've been getting. Yes.
I would be very, very much
That
intrigued to
would
follow
be
that storyline.
wild.
Yeah, I would love to see that. And I mean, and then taking on the other side, I mean, Tara has, there was a moment there where I don't know if Tara, I don't think they'll do that with Tara, with Jenna Ortega, even though Jenna Ortega has kind of embraced her she seems to really love these darker characters and kind of playing in that realm. So I don't know if your number one, kind of reverse of Drew Barrymore being the hot star and having your next lead star with Jenna being the killer would be, I don't know, too far of a stretch.
No, but honestly, you've got the core four. One of them needs to die in the opening.
Oh,
One of
100%.
them.
Yeah. Like I said, I mentioned
It
earlier,
needs
if not
to
Gale, then
happen.
someone from the core four. Yeah. Yeah.
Or yeah, like we need a big death now.
I agree.
You have not given us the big death that we've been wanting.
Besides, I guess Dewey.
Well, Dewey.
Yeah.
But sadly, again, the trailer spoiled that. So, in my opinion, like he got a great send out, even though I don't think that was Amber, but whatever. I would like to see the opening just go out and actually shock the hell out of us. Do another, like, this was a great shocking opening. I want an opening to top the opening of Scream.
I agree.
I think that would be fantastic, and I always want to see that.
Because we technically have never seen, we haven't seen Radio Silence kind of traditional opening with killing someone, because again they diverted from Tara. Then we got, they killed someone in this one, but it wasn't anyone. Well, it was still some Arrowwave. So I guess we did see it, but it was
like
it was
a marquee name or one of them.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. I agree. And I guess last question with Scream 7, do we get because every Scream film takes place like literally within the same kind of calendar year, or like maybe I don't even know if a film has had a full year between films. It's always been kind of like, well, I guess 3 to 4 might have been a little bit of time. But do you think we jump ahead in time a little bit, or do we stay within the same calendar year as far as maybe 6 months from this film, or do we go, they graduated college, it's been 4 years since the events of Scream 5. Like, do you think we get a big time jump, or stay within the?
I wouldn't mind a time jump, because it could add some it could we could see fractured relationships, or you could use that to introduce new characters without giving a lot of backstory. But what I would like to see, because we really haven't seen it, if whenever it takes place, can we get it during the winter? Especially if they keep it in New York.
Yeah.
Oh, that could be kind of fun with like
that
snow
adds
as a
even
like
more. You ever see that even adds another
with
element
the
of
blood on the
surprise.
snow. Like, there's just some things I would really enjoy.
Radio silence. Listen, me and Yutaka have given you guys some gems. So if you guys need extra little writers, we got some free time. We can make it happen.
You can make me an extra. Kill me on set. Go for it.
You heard it here first. Yutaka's the opening kill. He's gonna get his.
Oh my God! Wouldn't that be a dream come true?
Listen, man, as we did the other night, we can talk for hours about this great franchise. I think we touched on a lot of stuff, and there's probably a lot more conversations to be had about this film, not only here, but of course on the Horror Hour. And I look forward to seeing what you guys have to say in your spoiler discussion. But listen, man, this was a lot of fun. I think at the end of the day, you said it perfectly. This is a film. What I want from a Scream film is a good time, some great characters that I care for, a killer Ghostface, which this Ghostface to me was definitely one of the most brutal, if not the most brutal of the entire franchise, or I should say the Ghostfaces. Even though I didn't like who was behind the mask, I really do like what they brought to the table with the New York vibe. And we talked about some great performances from the sisters and our side characters. I wasn't the biggest fan of the new characters, but overall, this was a good one. I really enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to see what they do next. Any final thoughts, Yutaka?
No, just thank you for having me. I could, again, as you said, I could talk for hours about this film or this franchise. So this was just truly a delight to get to come on here and get to talk spoilers, because, oh man, it's just been, this has been a blast. So thank you.
Awesome.
And also, people go see it.
Go see it if you haven't. Well, I assume you guys, if you're watching this, you probably saw it, or you were just waiting for us to break it down. And you're like, I'm still going to go see it. But Yutaka, before we wrap up officially, why don't you, again, let the people know where they can find your content and all that good stuff.
Sure. Yeah. You can find us at the Horror Hour TV. We have our own channel as well, where we're doing, again, reviews, interviews, deep dives. We have a podcast on all streaming services. And same thing on Twitter and Instagram. And you'll probably see a bunch of collaborations as well, because that's one of our favorite things to do.
Awesome. So again, all the information can be found in the description. We got this is going to be a good year for horror. I got a feeling in my bones. Megan, I had a fun time with. Obviously, had a really good time with this one. But we are just at the cusp of Evil Dead Rise, and there's, of course, A24 comes with their very great horror films. Blumhouse is still out there, and there you have it, guys. Our thoughts on Scream 6, the good, the bad, the ugly, what we want to see next, how the killers were handled, all that good stuff. Almost 2 hours, just as long as the movie, but this is what you get when you get two fans of the franchise geeking out about this franchise that, if we're being honest, has a lot more hits than misses, especially compared to your Freddys and your Jasons and even my personal favorite, Michael Myers.
Even at its worst, it's still
better than a lot of the crap we get out there these days. That's for sure. So shout out to Scream. Shout out to this team that's put this franchise on their back and keep carrying the legacy of Wes Craven. And hopefully when it comes to the inevitable 7, they'll end their trilogy on a high, which I'm pretty confident they will, based on the first Scream 5 and Scream 6. So, hey, before you all leave, like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And again, Yutaka, I appreciate you joining me. And hopefully we'll do this again. And we'll catch you guys on the next one.